Biker Dad is brought to you by UpstateBikerLawyer.com and Tom Schimmerling, founding member of the National Academy of Motorcycle Injury Lawyers. Hi, my name is Chris Best, and I left my 25-year corporate career to ride motorcycles and tell stories. And this week, that adventure brings me through that door and through time. We are in Wisconsin, outside of Green Bay, and I'm at one of the coolest Harley dealers that I have ever been at, and I've been to them coast to coast, hundreds of them. Doc's Harley-Davidson, just outside of Green Bay, Wisconsin. That's where we start this episode of the Biker Dad TV show, so let's roll. Have you ever sat at your job and thought, what if I just got up and left? Tell that horrible boss to take this job and shove it. Have you ever wanted to just walk out? What about burnout? Well, that's exactly what I did, but I didn't just quit. I left my 25-year corporate career to ride motorcycles and tell your story. Daytona Beach, Florida, where you can actually drive onto the beach. Rick Fairless, a legend of his own, introduced me to Richard Rollins, Mayfield, Kentucky, Southeast Missouri, beautiful city of Knoxville, Tennessee, Gulf Coast of Mississippi, the Florida coast and the Tampa Bay area, Orange County Choppers, Roadhouse and Museum, talking to Paul Tuttle Sr. himself. But make no mistake, this is not a show about motorcycles or even about me. Instead, I travel across the country to meet the people who use their passion for motorcycles to make their communities stronger, safer, and better. This is Biker Dad. Well, that's a 1921 Harley-Davidson. There is a 100-year-old Indian over there. There are handmade Harley parts on the wall over there. And that's not even the wildest thing about what I would say is the wildest Harley-Davidson dealership I've ever been to. And I've been to hundreds of them across the country. There's not another Harley dealership where I think you can kick it with a kangaroo, pet a porcupine. It's like a giant gerbil. Yeah. You're very cute. Those don't look cute.
Making me break up the room here.
Get lunch with a gator.
Whoa.
Touch a turtle, and a whole lot more. And that's just the beginning of what's going on here at Doc's Harley-Davidson outside of Green Bay, Wisconsin. And Doc himself is quite a story alone. So let's go check it out. Let's roll.
Looks like a beaver now, doesn't he?
It does.
Yeah. Off the Magic Dragon, Magic Rock Dragon right here. That's a 5,000-pound granite boulder that I went up to Mountain, Wisconsin and paged through 1,000 boulders before I picked that one. We're gonna feed the medium gators if you want to watch.
One of the reasons we came to Wisconsin is because my friend Tom Schimmerling with Upstate Biker Lawyer was sponsoring an accident scene management class there, training people how to deal with when their friends go down in an accident. So he came along with me for the tour.
1979, April 1st, I moved up the street and I started Doc's HD Repair. And I rented a little bitty building. I don't have a picture of it, but I drew a picture of it right here. So, see,
All right.
there's that building. Now, I didn't rent the big part of the building with the smokestack up there. I rented just a little building on the back of the building.
That's very
For
cool.
$75 a month, and that's where I started. And 2 days before I opened my door, I fixed a man's Harley, and I made $75 on the parts and labor, so I knew I'd be there at least a month. Nobody ever gave me anything. I never inherited anything. It's all just been a lot of hard work and fun and excitement. And then it was during 1982 that I was actually, ever since I started in the little shop and here, there was a dealer in Manawa, Wisconsin, 35 miles to the southwest. And This guy had 3 mechanics working for him, and they had all the equipment, but nobody knew how to run it, to rebuild motors and transmissions. This guy was bringing me all of his heavy engine and transmission work twice a week to my little shop, dropping it off and picking it up from Manawa, 35 miles away. And I was in this shop right here, and I had just finished up a box of shovel heads I did a valve job on, and he was going out the door with them, and I stopped him at the last minute, and I said, "Hey," and he stuck his head back in the door. He said, "What? If you ever want to sell your Harley franchise, let me know." And he laughed and went out the door. And I thought he didn't want to, but 2 weeks later the phone rang and it was him, and he had all the figures together, and I said, "Well, I didn't know you wanted to sell it." He said, "Oh yeah." There's 531 Harley-Davidson dealers right now. There used to be about 800, but the newer regime at Harley has been making it so tough for all of us that a lot of them have quit. They just can't make a go of it. Over the last 5 years, they've taken our profit margins and cut them in half on all the bikes and the parts and the accessories and the motor clothes, everything across the board, and then they're putting it in their pocket to make the company look better on paper. But at our expense, you know, so we used to make that money, now they are. And it's damn hard to be a Harley nowadays, a Harley dealer. It's a tough go. But we're holding our own. But anyway, our service department, now a lot of Harley dealers, if you buy a brand new Harley from someone and you bring it back, you can get an oil change or something. But if you've had a Harley for more than 5 years, the dealer in Green Bay, if your bike is more than 5 years old, they won't touch it. They won't give you an oil change. They won't change a light bulb.
Why is that?
I don't know. It's their policy. You know? And there's a lot of dealers doing that. Some are 8 years, some are 5 years. They just won't touch an older bike of any sort because of any problem.
Not only will they work on old bikes here at Doc's Harley-Davidson, they specialize in them. So if you're like me and you ride older bikes and you're having trouble finding help, just call the Doc. And speaking of old bikes, they got tons of them all over the place.
Yeah, this is a 1919 with original paint and everything. It's original Survivor. You don't see that happen much. This is the bike we talked about that I bought for $2, the remake of it. There's the original bike, a picture of it up there, and those pictures on the door. But anyway, that's not the $2 bike, but it's the remake of the $2 bike, because I sold it later that same year for $100.
So they recreated your mom's dragon really well, huh?
I did that.
You did it? Oh,
Yeah, I sat at the table, but in between the dragon's legs it says Doc and Mom. I gave her credit for the design. I was building the seat, and I didn't even bend the seat down to match the frame yet, and I was just padding it up and setting it on the bike, and it was such a beautiful morning, and I took my belt off and I tied it around the front of the frame right here and put a roper on the back, and I took the bike for a ride. I just had to go for a ride. And then when I came back, my mom got 2 pictures of the bike, and lo and behold, that's the only 2 pictures we've ever gotten of the bike.
Wow.
So those 2 pictures are the only ones. And it was before I finished the seat. So as soon as I got back, then of course I finished the seat, and then I went in and I self-taught myself on my mom's sewing machine how to sew, and I made a seat that looked just like that. So I just bought it at Mecum Auction. It's a little 1949 Harley 125 Hummer. And it's got this girder front end, and from 48 to 51, they ran this type of front end in here. This is a 1941 Harley that a 77-year-old man brought this bike in and wondered if I wanted to buy it. He bought it when he was 14 years old for $21, and he took it home and he said, "Mom and Dad, look, I bought a motorcycle." I said, "You can't have a motorcycle. You take that to your uncle's barn and park it and don't ever touch it." And he didn't for 77 years until he finally went back and picked the bike up out of the barn and brought it here and sold it to me. But I said, "What happened to this crankcase? Look at that." And his uncle, when he put it in the barn, he parked it on a bag of fertilizer. And it ate the crankcase. All that corrosion just crawled up into the engine and ate it alive. Isn't that a shame? Jeez. Yeah, no kidding. Oh well. So it's a proof that there is beauty in imperfection. So here's a 1911 Harley-Davidson with a leather belt drive. Single speed, you just tighten up the belt and away you go, single cylinder. This is the 1913 that I restored here. I spent 2 years restoring this one. And this has the double chain, but it's got the clutch in the rear wheel. And again, you pull this lever back and you tighten up the clutch in the rear wheel, and away the bike goes. 1 speed, and that's it. They're not real fast, but they're very fun. This has an acetylene headlight on it. Now, when you bought this bike from Harley-Davidson, Harley-Davidson did not come out with a headlight on the stock motorcycles till 1915. This is in 1913. It would not have come with a headlight. But back in the day, you could order a kit. This is an Old Sol headlight, SOL, and you could order the headlight kit and the Prestolite acetylene tank, and this just thumb screws on with clamps onto your handlebar, and you've got to find a way to mount it on your bike, and you've got a headlight. It's acetylene. You have to light it with a match. And there's a torch inside of the acetylene headlight. There's the hose comes to the bottom. There's a porcelain torch with a Y in there. It's got little holes in there, and you open up your headlamp and you turn on your gas, and then you light it, and it makes a ring that looks like it's spinning, like when the headlights are running. You know? So it's kind of cool. And all of our Cannonball bikes are have headlights, acetylene headlights on it too. You have to light them with a match. But I don't run the acetylene tank on Cannonball because it would not run all day. You would not see it during the day anyway. So on these bikes, I've actually put in LED. There's if you look in the headlight there on the reflector in the back, I've took an LED wafer from an FLH spot lamp and put it in there. Cool. But it still has the white torch in there that if you'd hook acetylene to it, it would light. The motorcycle called the Bluegill Special. This is the 1959 panhead that was dredged out of the Chicago River in 1989. There was a gentleman up in Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin that was contracted to dredge the Chicago River, so he took his dredge down to the Chicago River, put it in, made a big scoop, and there was a 59 panhead in the mud, and he dumped it on the bank, and then he chained it up and put it in his pickup truck and took it home and hosed it off. And it sat there for many years, and then he passed away, and his grandson sold me the bike then. The VIN number on here has been Chinesed out of it, so I don't know what story this thing has to tell or why it was in the Chicago River, but yeah, well, and but you can tell on the bottom of the engine there's numbers on the bottom of the block showing its matching cases. You can tell the year, and it is a 59. So I tell everybody it's the Bluegill Special because I took out the rear spark plug when I got it, and I looked down in there with my bore scope, and there was a bluegill staring me in the face. And so that's not a true story, but it's a fun one, you know. But anyway, I embellished it with bluegills and seaweed and all different stuff as though it was dredged off the bottom of the river.
Biker Dad is brought to you by UpstateBikerLawyer.com and Tom Schimmerling, founding member of the National Academy of Motorcycle Injury Lawyers. Hey, it's Chris Best, Biker Dad with Upstate Biker Lawyer, Tom Schimmerling, UpstateBikerLawyer.com. And normally when we talk, we're either at an animal conference in Las Vegas or we're somewhere in upstate New York, but we're in Wisconsin. Of all places, so.
We have been supporting these accident management classes all over upstate New York and Pennsylvania, and they had this huge event here in Wisconsin at Doc's Harley-Davidson dealership, which is an institution up here. And I knew that, I'd heard about that, but until I saw it, I wouldn't have believed it. It's really an amazing place here. Got like a little theme park.
Yeah.
And Doc, who owns the dealership, but also I think is an engineering genius, even though he has no degree in engineering. He builds motorcycles from the ground up. He builds engines, takes engines apart, makes his own parts. I mean, it's really, really amazing. And after spending several hours talking to Doc, what I got thinking about is people, I don't know if you're old enough to remember a little magazine called Reader's Digest.
Yeah.
A lot of people never heard of Reader's Digest, but you and I have.
Yeah.
So there used to be a section in Reader's Digest that was called The Most Unforgettable Character I Ever Met. And I would have to put this Doc in that category. He is really a genius. You know, self-taught genius. I mean, he builds airplanes, motorcycles, cars. I mean,
A, it's rare to have one that's owned by a family or a single person anymore, not by a corporation or a big group. And two, I've never been to one that's like this. It's just actually insanity.
Well, this is a 1918 Big Eli Ferris wheel. It's 40 feet high, and I've attached 12 Japanese motorcycles to it instead of seats for people. and I drive it with a 1976 Harley-Davidson shovel head engine and transmission. So when it runs, it's somewhat like a sacrifice to the Harley gods. I'm gonna fire up the engine here. I actually had two of them. We bought them from a amusement place in Wapaka, and I put the first one up, and it had the seats and the tractor engine and everything, and we went to use it, and then my insurance company came about 3 days later and said, you know, if you're going to give rides on there, you owe us $10,000 a year insurance. It's like, what? That's got a lot of rides, 35 cents each before we make a profit. So I said, okay, I guess I'm not going to give rides. They said, okay, then you got to build a 6-foot fence around it so nobody gets to it. So I built this all out of leftover stuff from machine shops and the big panels that you cut pieces out of. So, well then the pickers came here one day and they decided that they wanted to buy my 1918 Ferris wheel and move it to some guy out west who's having he's got a big amusement park, an antique amusement park. This is a 1950s Deeming water pump. And I made this contraption here so to bring all these old acetylene tanks and stuff, you know. This is old Bass bar rail here. It's got a copper roof, but it's all oxidized now.
You must have crazy ideas going on in your head all the time.
Yeah, always something, yeah. Jeez. Here's a Cobra I made out of Harley camshafts.
Oh my God.
Harley had a big camshaft recall one time, so I built this Cobra all out of Harley camshaft. This fangs here, a valve that cut everything away except where it fits on the seat, you know. Here's a Harley-Davidson kickstart engine that says Harley-Davidson, and most people never knew they made these. These were made in the late 20s and early 30s, and they're an industrial engine, like you would use it for a water pump or a lawnmower or any kind of use like you'd use a Briggs for. So Harley made them back then. They put kickstarters on them, and then they couldn't sell the bikes very well back in those days, so they started building these industrial motors. When they got done in the early 30s, then they sold these ideas to Briggs and Stratton, and that's where those engines kind of kept going, you know?
Biker Dad is brought to you by UpstateBikerLawyer.com and Tom Schimmerling, founding member of the National Academy of Motorcycle Injury Lawyers. It's Chris Best, Biker Dad with Upstate Biker Lawyer, Tom Schimmerling, UpstateBikerLawyer.com. We're in Wisconsin. Of all places.
At Doc's Harley-Davidson dealership. He built this 4-engine motorcycle. Not taking 4 engines that were already sitting there, but tearing these engines apart, putting in new parts, building parts, putting all this together, this huge motorcycle that seats 10 people in 17 days.
Yeah.
And as I said to him, you know, what is it like to be a motorcycle mechanic working for you? You know, I mean, I can't even imagine what that would be like. I mean, to work for someone who can do that.
Yeah. And so, yeah, he started off buying a motorcycle for $2 in 1967 and building it and fixing it up and selling it, probably not knowing anything about motorcycles. That's the other thing, too, we talked about. You know, if he had an engineering degree or something, he's completely self-taught. He's a self-starter. He bought the land to put this place on and started from nothing. It's pretty crazy.
It really is. When, you know, I knew his nickname was Doc, but then I thought, well, maybe that is because he's got a doctorate in mechanical engineering from Stanford University or
Yeah.
Cornell or someplace, you know, but no.
Yeah, his PhD, he says, stands for Panhead Harley-Davidson.
I mean, he has a restaurant
Yeah.
that he built onto the dealership. And it's not like a little coffee nook,
Yeah.
you know, hamburgers. That's this huge restaurant. And he built this bar out of this beautiful wood from Africa or
yeah.
someplace, you know? I mean, he doesn't do anything halfway.
Oh, don't try to pet him right now.
He's running away. That's the kangaroo. He's soft. It's not like a bunny. When it comes to bikers, things can get pretty wild, but the wildest things at Doc Harley-Davidson are the animals. There's a whole zoo there, including porcupines. Looks like a giant gerbil. Kangaroos,
Boy, well, you don't see that often. Okay.
giant turtles, much more, but the main attraction is the gators, from the tiny babies to the big old daddies and mommies. And feeding time is showtime.
When a gator gets an animal in the wild, like a bird or something, there's a lot of different nutrients in the feet and the feathers and the guts and all different things. And they don't get it with just chicken or beef, you know, so we give them these gator vitamins, basically. Let's see if Rex will be interested in that. He likes the biscuits. They're not real exciting today. Some days we come in here and they're just thrashing around and jumping up both at the same time, trying to get the food at the same time, and it's quite exciting. Sometimes he can be very vocal with that, like in spring when he starts feeling his oats, he'll get up on the bank and he'll stand up on all fours and his whole body will just shudder, and then he will, whoo! I mean, you'd swear a pickup truck hit the building, you know?
Well, it's probably like puppy teeth.
Yeah. Yeah, they're like little needles.
Yeah. Just a tetanus. One or two.
Same for the ones inside.
We're gonna feed the medium gators if you want to watch. It's always exciting, right? What's that? You want me to spot you here or what? To do what? Former, yeah. Yeah, I've had the big guy for, I don't know, well over 30 years. Rex is his name, and a couple of years ago he got out, you know, and I don't know if you heard that story. All the TV and radio stations were here. We were going to a race in Ohio, and we were just leaving the racetrack with the Top Fuel bikes, and the phone rings, and it's Doc, the big gator got out. It's like, what? That hasn't happened in 35 years, you know? And but they said, sure, yeah, he's out. So, and Kirsten right away, she's freaking out. Well, don't let anybody know. We can't let them know the USDA. We can't let anybody know that our gator got out, and everybody will be freaking. And well, anyway, 10 minutes later, every TV and radio station was calling me, what happened, what happened? And next morning we drove back that night. Next morning we had 77 people here cruising all over the 72 acres trying to find the gator. Where did he go? Nobody could find him. Even 2 dog teams were here smelling, you know, to try to find the trail. Couldn't do that either. And there's big swamps and stuff back over down this way and over here. And oh man, I mean, you're into water up to here with grass and everything. That if he'd have got in there, he wouldn't have come out for years, you know. But anyhow, 3 days we looked for that gator. We could not find him. So finally, on the 3rd day, my son Steve, master technician in the Harley shop, he went down past Rider's Edge and into the woods, and then north about 300 feet. And then he found Rex out in a beautiful 30-foot pond out in the middle of the woods, and he called up and he said, I found Rex, you know. And we all went running down there with straps and trailers and everything to retrieve him. 10 of us went running down there, and here's Rex sitting next to that pond, and he's in a lounge chair with an ice cream drink with an umbrella in it. And he puts his head up like, "You coming to get me?" I said, "Yeah, pack your bags, buddy. Where you been?" Anyway, I'm always the first guy who has to jump on his head and hold him down while we tape up his mouth. So now we're in water and mud up to here, and there's a big log going across this little pond. I said, "Now listen, guys, this thing's 450 pounds, 10 feet long." I said, especially in the water, he'll do the death roll. He's really hard. On the ground, it's a lot easier to hold him down, but when they're in water, it's a lot trickier. So I said, when I jump on and grab his head, I said, you guys have to start grabbing legs and tails and hanging on and getting on his back and hold him down, you know. So they did, and I did, and I got his head and I put it up on the log, and then Steve wiped his mouth off and wrapped it with tape. Then we put a car strap around his front legs here, and we're dragging him out, and he's doing that death roll and jumping all over the place, and we dragged him out of there and got him on the trailer and put him back in his pen. Then I had a serious talk with him. I ended up grounding him for 3 weeks, and I took away all of his cell phone privileges. So at any rate, yeah, all the TV and radio stations were here and checking everything out. It was quite a chaos. We got a lot of mileage out of it, really. You know, it was pretty kind of cool. And then TV2 came back at Christmas time. They did a recap of their top 10 stories. And they came back in and they said, "Okay, did you ever figure out how Rex got out?" I said, "No, we never have figured out how he got out, but I know why he wanted to get out." And looking back, the year before was COVID, I said, and it was movie night for the Gators, and they had requested the movie The Great Escape. So,
Biker Dad is brought to you by UpstateBikerLawyer.com and Tom Schimmerling, founding member of the National Academy of Motorcycle Injury Lawyers.
I'm a lawyer. I represent people who've been injured in motorcycle accidents, and you are quite the mechanical genius. And I've seen the bikes you've assembled and reassembled and reassembled. I mean, it's just amazing going back 100 years. Tell me, how has motorcycle safety evolved over the years?
well, I think people are far more aware of it than they used to be. And of course, with the nowadays, you don't see as many people out drinking and driving anywhere near as much either, and because of the consequences, of course, you know, and certainly some people do yet, and there's problems there, but nowhere near like it used to be. I think the mentality years ago was, let's go see how drunk we can get and drive home, you know.
Well, you've taken these bikes apart. You've seen everything and just how they're built. Mm-hmm. Like, are bikes any safer today than they were 100 years ago, 30 years ago?
Oh, well, yeah, they've made a lot of improvements in the handling and function of the motorcycle, you know, and you know, I've had friends that have had their old bike break down and they're alongside the road, and somebody come along and takes them out and they're dead, you know, just because the bike quit, you know, and the modern bikes are more dependable as far as just quitting. Not to say none of them do, but I think it's a lot better than it used to be, you know. So, but yeah, certainly the suspensions and the everything about the modern bikes, it's certainly like the newer cars. You know, you drive an old muscle car and, you know, right, it's all over the board and hard to make a corner, and you're spinning around and out, where the newer cars are going to take that corner a lot better and faster. Not to say with a newer car you still can't exceed the limits though, which certainly can happen, yeah.
We're still on the road here outside of Green Bay, Wisconsin at Doc's Harley-Davidson, which is a lot more than Doc's Harley-Davidson. I think we cannot even jam it all into 1.5 hour episode of the Biker Dad TV show. So you're going to be seeing stuff from Doc's throughout this season here on the Biker Dad TV show. That's it for this week's episode. Until next time, please look twice for motorcycles.